Hi guys, hope you're having a great evening. It's Fred and Sheila with Hatfield, McCoy Museum and Adventures and FS Investigates.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another video. This is going to be a video on one of the doctors that performed the autopsy on Johnny Edrington, associate or assistant medical examiner, Hunsaker.
Hunsaker.
And at the time, he was I think he would have been about 46 years old. I think he's in his 80s now or something like that. But at the time, I think we done the math one day, and he would have been about 46 when he done this autopsy. Now, our question has always been, how many autopsies has he done before then? How long had he worked for the ME's office and so forth like that? How much experience did he have? Because we all know the longer you do something, the better you get at it and the more you learn. Now, he had, in Asher's book, you had medical director David Jones, who was over, way I understand it, the way we understand it, Mr. Hunsaker. And then you had the chief medical examiner, George Nichols.
Okay.
And you'll see later on where George Nichols actually signed the death certificate. But those two would have been the boss of Mr. Hunsaker.
Okay.
Now, we're going to watch a video, and we may stop it on the way through. We may just let the video play and then pick up on the other end and talk about it.
Okay. Just a second.
In our search for answers, we went to the doctor who performed the autopsy.
There was no evidence to suggest to me that I was aware of that someone else did it.
Dr. John Hunsaker was the Associate State Medical Examiner at the time.
There were 3 different gunshot residue tests taken of his hands after he was discovered.
Guys, what he says there is there was 3 gun residue tests, and we ask why 3. Either he had powder residue on his hands or he didn't. Right. And then you'll hear him here in a second. He says there was an abundance amount of residue on his hands. Well, would it matter if there was a little bit or an abundance? Does it matter if if he's got his hands around the barrel or the cylinder of that gun and he's fighting with that gun with somebody? Well, if he committed S-side, he'd have powder residue, but he would also have powder residue. Go ahead, Punk.
If they laid it in his hand.
If they exactly
on his hands.
Even when they laid the gun in his hands, he would have powder residue if his hands hadn't been near the barrel when somebody was trying to shoot him. Exactly. Thanks,
also,
babe. He
said it had abundance amount of residue. So then why do the 3 tests if it had abundance?
I don't know. Why would you perform 3? That is in the file. Maybe there's an excuse, a reason in that file that would explain why. I mean, does he think? All respect to this doctor. I have
exactly
all respect to these people. I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Questions.
We're just asking questions. But does a person maybe think that it would be more credible, more believable if we say, well, we done 3 tests.
Right.
If he had it in one test, it didn't matter about the other 2. Either he had residue, powder residue, or he didn't. Go ahead, Punk.
Okay, here we go.
Which had abundant amounts of residue.
He says after conducting the autopsy, he initially listed the manner of death as undetermined.
It's okay. You've done good. Initially said the cause of death was undetermined. Now, this is the medical examiner, and he says initially he had the results as undetermined.
Right.
Now, what changed that? What changed it from undetermined to either S-side or undetermined? Because he says it's that they thought he thought they knew how he was going to rule after he changed it from, or was going to change it from undetermined. Go ahead.
He was leaning. He said they knew the way he was leaning.
That's exactly. Like that. Yep. No, you're right. You're right.
The autopsy, he initially listed the manner of death as undetermined.
And you're saying no one
came back to you and asked you for your professional medical opinion on the cause of death, the manner of death, excuse me?
No, I think they knew which way I was leaning.
We asked him if it was possible Edrington's death was a homicide.
Well, possible is a pretty weak standard, but sure, it's possible. Can you?
Was it possible? It was a homicide. Now, remember, in the beginning, he was going to name it as a undetermined. She asked him if it was possible that it was a homicide. Sure. Can you absolutely rule it out? No, he says. This is the doctor.
Right.
I don't think you can absolutely rule it out. He's going to say in a minute. Guys, if there's even and Sheila and I have said this since day one, ain't we, babe?
Yep.
If there's one iota,
An inkling.
that it was a homicide, you should never. These two gentlemen, the doctor and Asher, talk about how much they care for the family and want to be respectful to the family. You're going to hear it, but if you really want us to believe that, why would you want to call anything a S side when there's even a doubt that it was a homicide? Why would we disrespect this man's name, this man's honor, this man's military service, his service with the Kentucky State Police?
And put his family.
This is not our words. Go back in a minute, play this part over. And she says, was it possible the death was a homicide? Sure, he says. Can you absolutely rule it out? No, he says. I don't think you can absolutely rule it out. Now, he says some more here in a minute, but I wanted to emphasize this right now. If you can't rule out a homicide, why in the world would you want to go to the next level down and call it a S side? Why dishonor the man's name and his family name and his... Go ahead, babe.
Absolutely, quotes, absolutely rule it out. And I don't think you can absolutely rule it out.
See?
But I think it's unlikely.
How unlikely?
Guys, we don't make our decisions on unlikely or on 85% this and 15% that. That's not the way it's supposed to work. And I'm not a medical examiner. I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn last night, but I'll be here all week. Would you want Mr. Hunsaker, would he want somebody performing an autopsy on somebody in his family or making a decision about a member of his family and being not sure or thinking, yeah, that could have been a homicide, but we're going to rule it a S side? How would he feel? How would anybody out there watching this feel? Again, you're just going to have to watch this play over and over because it's only 2 or 3 minutes long, his video. Go ahead, babe. I'm sorry. I don't want to.
It's all good.
My view on that is that they will never find the person that killed Trooper Edrington unless they dig up his grave.
Now, guys, listen to those comments. She says, can you absolutely rule it out? Could it have been a homicide? He said, sure. Can you absolutely rule it out? He said, no, you can't. I don't think you can absolutely rule it out. And then he makes this comment. I don't think you'll ever find the person that shot Johnny Edrington unless you dig him up. Go ahead, babe.
Dr. Hunsaker and retired Colonel Asher tell us they're sympathetic to the sensitive nature of...
See, I don't want to be rude. That's not a good statement for those two gentlemen to make. I'll just be honest. I'll just tell you Fred's opinion. They want to be sympathetic towards the trooper's family. They want towards the trooper. I'd have to call hogwash on that. Hogwash. I don't think it's nothing but disrespectful. One of them says he waits 35 years before he wants to correct something. It wasn't important enough for him to correct 35 years ago. And the other one says that it could have been a homicide. Sure. Yeah, absolutely could have been. And then he makes a statement that says, if you want to know who killed Trooper Edrington, you have to dig them up. In other words, he done it. How can that be the statement? How can that be scientific? How can that be something? We don't. The medical field. I don't know the medical field good enough to really talk about it, but that's what he's for. That's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
We go to these people here, these medical examiners, for facts. We go to them for truth, scientific facts to tell us
Right.
what happened here, what happened there. And if they don't know, on that form, on that death certificate, you're going to see in a minute, it gives them undetermined or pending further investigation. He could have put undetermined, pending further investigation. But he had 4 troopers and the county coroner telling him it was a S side. And he, my opinion, he buckled. Because he just got through saying, in his opinion, well, I don't think in his opinion, go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, okie dokie.
Sharing these details of the case.
It's a horrible thing for a family to go through. So,
Go ahead and stop it.
Okay.
Now, my question there is, he's getting emotional.
Yeah.
The doctor's getting emotional. Now, we tend to do that with age. I found that out when we found when we found Mr. Couch out in the woods. I tend to do that myself. I hit a spot in life I didn't know I had in me, and that's okay.
Sure,
but he's getting emotional. Is he getting emotional because of age? Is he getting emotional because something like this has happened in his family? I don't know. I'm just speculating. Or is he getting emotional because maybe he's got some remorse?
He knows something, or
maybe he ruled on something back then, or said something that at this age now, and after doing hundreds and hundreds of more autopsies throughout the years, maybe something's ringing a bell and he's thinking, maybe the evidence didn't add up and I shouldn't have been persuaded. I don't know. I'm speculating because we haven't talked. Again, we'd love to talk to Dr. Hunsaker, won't we, babe?
Yeah, buddy.
We'd love to ask him what he can tell us about it. And, because he's given contradictory statements here. Once he says it could have been a homicide. Sure, it could have been. Absolutely could have been. Can he rule it out? No. And then he says, but if you want to know who killed Trooper Edrington, you're going to have to dig them up. Doesn't know. Go ahead.
Like I say, I don't know the rationale, what the impulse was, the underlying impulse to conclude early on that it was a homicide.
Wouldn't stop it. Guys, doesn't know what the underlying impulse was. According to all who investigated the suicidal tendencies, including the FBI, Johnny had none.
Exactly.
Trooper Johnny Edrington had no suicidal tendencies. There was no medical problems in the family. He was happy over his wife's pregnancy. Job was doing good. I heard somebody say the other day that brought up financial. Well, where'd the financial come from? Where did that? Was that some back alimony from a divorce? Was that really that much to cause financial? Or is that somebody in the past that has said that? See, people sometimes says things, and then if you want to put it in a report and make it look worse than it is, having financial difficulties, we owed Social Security and everything else. We're out here looking for Joseph Couch for a reward to help us pay an overpayment to Social Security while they're out here giving our money to illegal aliens. I know, I got you. But just because somebody has some debt or owes some back alimony doesn't make that person, but you can put it in a report to make it seem like that if you want the report to read like that. Go ahead, Punk.
Not according to anybody else. they said everything that day was a normal day for him. He was happy.
Yeah.
And there was nothing out of place or seemed off with him. So,
Yeah, that's what they said.
And stick to that. That was the official line.
Kentucky State Police say this case remains under investigation as a murder. They say, and it's a quote, "We will not rest until the case is resolved," end quote.
What?
Okay, you can take us up there. I'll tell you what, show us the,
one thing.
show the death certificate.
Okay. There it is. And I'll zoom in there.
There's the death certificate,
And
guys,
right
right there
there.
in the center of the
They won't be
page.
able to see it here, though.
It's George Nichols. They can't see your mouse moving, I
Right.
don't
That's
believe.
what I'm saying.
In the center of the page is George Nichols, chief medical examiner. That would have been Hunsaker's boss that signed this after they had the FBI investigate. They had the famous Vincent,
DeMayo.
and we saw a thing earlier where he's got a big training academy or
Yeah.
something somewhere, big building in his name and honor. All these people, David Jones, all these people wrote it a homicide. And again, down there in the bottom left, it says natural causes, accidental death, suicidal, homicide, and homicide is marked
And undetermined. Or,
undetermined and pending further investigation. Why did Mr. Hunsaker think that he had to put suicide? Now he didn't. There's nothing says that he ever put suicide on anything. S side.
Right.
Mr. Asher says that he ruled it S side, that he was going to rule that way, and he even said I was leaning that way. Why lean that way if you don't know for a fact? If you don't know for a fact before you say somebody S-sided themselves, why not put pending further investigation? Why not put whatever the other one was? There's another
Undetermined.
undetermined. Thank you, babe.
You're welcome.
Wouldn't that have been the thing to put? Not why do we have to choose between suicide and homicide? He had a choice there. He could have put undetermined or pending further investigation. He even said that it could have been a homicide.
Right.
I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I think this was an injustice. And I think it was because there was 4 troopers standing there in front of him. And I think he was trying to please those 4 troopers and the state police, because at that time, he probably didn't know that the people in Frankfurt and other troopers were looking at it and thinking, shucks, guys, all you have to do is shoot somebody, lay a gun in their hands, whop some powder residue on them, and it'll be a toss-up, suicide or homicide. I know I'm saying the word, but I'm on a roll.
It's okay. No worries. Do you want to go to the next?
Intentionally, I think that's all of it there. Yeah, go to the next form. Go to Vincent.
I think it's this one. Yeah, right there it is. Mr. DeMayo's.
Based on the material supplied to me and the opinions I have stated in this letter, I would have to conclude that this case should be ruled a homicide. If there's any further, get a hold of them. That's the famous doctor there. That's the famous doctor that did Lee Harvey Oswald, done hundreds of or thousands of autopsies over the years.
Right.
A world-renowned pathologist. Him, the chief medical examiner, medical director, all these people ruled that it was a homicide. Why was it so important to other people to rule it a S side? Why couldn't they have been satisfied? I would have been satisfied had they said undetermined, pending further investigation. That's fine. That's understandable.
Well, sure.
If they didn't want to put it as a homicide. But I sure wouldn't rush to judgment and put a S side on somebody's name or to their children or child and their grandchildren. I wouldn't have done that. Rush to judgment and put a title like that on a man's death that he can't come back and. I don't understand that. It could have been two other things there. It didn't have to be homicide. If he didn't want to go with homicide, he don't agree that he was murdered. Okay. I don't have enough evidence to say he was murdered, but I don't have enough evidence to say that it was S side, other than him having the gun in his hand. He fell 6 foot backwards on an incline.
Mhm.
On an incline, the gun never even come out of his hand. It stayed right there in his hand. Wasn't cupped like a regular gun with the finger in the trigger guard. It was just held like this.
Yeah.
Held like that. Like that.
And his flashlight was 5 feet
Oh,
away.
we're going to get to that.
So
Yeah. Why change the power and numbers for troopers? You brought up a great point, babe. And that's let's go to that.
okay. Do you want the other one?
We
or
got
do
a
you want-
call a few minutes ago. Not a call, but a text. In fact, that's it right there. This is a very smart gentleman,
Mhm.
former, still in law enforcement. One retirement and still in law enforcement. I'm not going to mention no names.
Good.
If you're watching, pal, we don't do that. Very intelligent. Thought about
Very
something
good.
Sheila and I didn't, and we're up 24/7 thinking about this case. And
Yeah.
he just right before we went on here text, and I haven't read. I'm sure he's got an update there or something because he's very intelligent.
Yep.
He brought up about the flashlight.
Good question. Or good
Flashlight.
statement.
Flashlight was found 5 feet from Johnny Edrington's body. In fact, in the last video, you see what we think the coroner or somebody is picking up his flashlight off of that blanket,
Yeah.
burn blanket. Would you get out of your car with your flashlight in your hand, knowing you're going to commit homicide? What would you need your flashlight for? Would you get out of your car with your flashlight? And then what did he do? He's got both hands. Remember, he's holding a gun with one hand,
Mhm.
according to Asher. Asher says he's holding a gun with one hand and he pushes the trigger with the thumb of the other.
Right.
He actually says he's holding a gun with his left hand. Johnny's right-handed. Johnny would have been holding a gun with his right hand and used his left thumb to pull the trigger. We believe, and everybody we've talked to believe. But this gentleman brought up a
Excellent.
excellent point. What do you do? Get out of the car and say, well, I was going off myself. Why in the world I bring my flashlight for me for?
Yeah.
Threw it to the side and offed himself. Again, you can make it if you want to. If you're really that down on making it look like an
Yeah.
S side and
Mhm.
you've prepared it that much, that's, you're right on it. That sure threw us off. That would throw somebody off. Not everybody's that.
Meticulous.
Thank you, babe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, there's too many questions. We respect Dr. Hunsaker, and that's his.
Sure.
The thing is, he gave. Sometimes in life, you got to make a decision. I'm sure in life, I'm sure at the age he is now, I'm sure right now you couldn't influence that man to say nothing that he didn't want to say.
Mhm.
I'm not sure that he knows what to say about that case back then. He's trying. He doesn't want to, in my opinion.
Exactly.
I'm
There you
allowed to
go.
have my opinion.
For sure. There's nothing wrong with that.
In my opinion, he doesn't want to go back on something just like everybody else. Those 6 gentlemen, they called it back then. That's their story, and they're sticking to it, and they don't want to change it.
Mhm.
But when Lee Searcy, I think she might have called him off guard because she just asked him, could it have been a homicide? The correct thing to have said, especially if you're going to rule something a S side, is no.
Right.
No, could not have been. I didn't want to put that unless it would have been. I wouldn't
Wouldn't have. Yeah.
belittled somebody's name by saying that if I didn't have overwhelming evidence. What you call it? Doug Asher says there's overwhelming evidence. We haven't seen it. He didn't put it in his book. I sure wish he would have put some of it in his book because it's not there. It's not in that chapter called the Big Gray Cover-Up.
Mhm. Yeah.
What you had here was 4 troopers within 2-3 hours
Mhm.
of Johnny Edrington's death. They called it a S side.
Yeah.
Why? Why? Because he had the gun in his hand. We discussed that in Asher's video.
Mhm.
There's not a video, there's not a movie out there in Hollywood a series, Perry Mason or none of them, that doesn't have at
Matlock.
least one Madlock or one of them that doesn't have a homicide that they tried to make look like a suicide, and Perry Mason or somebody will figure it out and they'll say, no, look at here, here's what happened, or Madlock.
Yeah.
Most people, most doctors, most would rather call something undetermined or under pending investigation or a homicide rather than a S-side. S-side puts a stigma with you and with your family the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying people's families don't do it.
For sure.
And if they do it, that's fine if you know for a fact that that's what happened.
Right.
But when there's doubt to this level, even to him, can you rule out a homicide? Can you rule it out? Could it have been a homicide? She said. And he said, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I put that in capital letters. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Can't rule it out. If you can't rule it out, you can't put S-side on the death certificate. No wonder. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm sorry. I could go on and on about it.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to show the other letter that we've got there for Mr.
Yeah, show it, and then we'll call this video.
Okay. I'll place that one up there. And I think it's this one.
This is after everything. Everybody went to all the trouble they did. This letter here was concerning his death and benefits, and I can't read it all there, but Dr. Vincent, the nationally renowned or recognized forensic expert, consulted. You know, they consulted the FBI, the people that does it was in Quantico, Virginia, the people that does research and everything on people that might commit S-side, and they come in and interview people and look at their records, look at their credit, look at their home life, it wasn't there. The FBI said it wasn't there. Dr. David Jones said it wasn't there. Dr. George Nichols said it wasn't there. Dr. Vincent DeMayo said it wasn't there. And there's more. Mm-hmm. This is a letter where Secretary of Justice Cabinet, acting Kentucky State Police Commissioner Michael Troop, wrote this letter on behalf of Johnny's family, and Johnny referenced the death of Trooper John M. Edrington, and he's stating that Johnny's death was ruled a homicide. Mm-hmm. He's stating that with all the tests that was run, all the reviews that's been done, and all this had to be done because within 2 or 3 hours of Johnny Edrington's death, 3 detectives and a post commander. Now, see, I don't know this for a fact.
Right.
We know what's in Trooper Asher's book. We haven't talked to the troopers. You know, we didn't know it till earlier.
Yep.
But we know one of these troopers. We don't know him personally.
Right.
But he treated us nothing but nice. We didn't know it until we was looking at a paper a while ago. We was looking for something else and comes up this note.
Yep.
And he was involved with the some of the reward that we collected for finding Joseph Couch. Mm-hmm. Nothing but nice to us. I talked to him on the phone. I didn't remember his name.
Right.
Didn't know him. Just like I said about people in London, we don't know people there other than meeting them or talking to them on the phone. But this guy here is a former Kentucky State Trooper. Mm-hmm. Nothing but nice to us. Mm-hmm. I can't believe it because I think we'll be able to sit down and talk to this fella the way he talked to me and Sheila on the Joseph Couch deal.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that works out. I'm hoping we get some answers and can clear up a lot of rumors and
that would be good.
Oh, it'd be great.
It would.
We would love it, guys. Sheila and I are not trying to prove one way or the other. If it's a fact, it's a fact. Mm-hmm. We just always felt that before we ever say anybody committed S-side, it should be 100% without a doubt. And especially if he's a veteran, law enforcement, it doesn't matter. If he's anybody,
Right.
if he's homeless, before we say that about somebody, that's not really something that you go around bragging about that your family did.
Right.
My family's doctors, my family's lawyers, my family's this and that. Oh yeah, my family's S side. Not a lot of people's proud of that. That's a sad situation for a family to live through. It's bad enough when you lose a family member, but especially when you lose them like that.
Okay.
And I don't know what happened in this case. It definitely got sidetracked.
We did, didn't it?
I don't
confusing.
know why it was sent down that road that it had to be an S side. And again, any homicide investigator, anybody that's ever investigated, just because something looks like a S side, I don't care. You know, let's talk about children. When children, the Smith lady that run her 2 little kids off into the lake, and put them in the car.
Yeah.
Anybody that's ever lost a child or something happened, who do we look at? We show up at the house. Yeah, my baby's missing. He's been gone, or she's been gone, and I don't know where they're at. And when did you see them last? When you start asking, who do you suspect? Who does the cop? Who do you in the media? Who do you watching the news? And you're thinking the whole time, that's the mom and dad. That's the
parents. Yeah.
Parents.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And why would it be any different when it's something like this? Why do we show up at a house and we've got a husband dead in the house and the wife's crying, oh, I loved him so much. He asked himself. And you look and you see the gun, you see this and that, never laying in his hand. And he usually sitting in a chair or laying in the bed, but you won't find a gun in his hand. First thing you want to do there is you want to take a powder residue test on the wife. You're going to get one off the body when he goes to the morgue.
Right.
When they do an autopsy, they're going to do him and see if he done himself. First thing you want to do, and she very well may be smart. She may have went straight after she done it, if she did do it, and washed her hands and cleaned the sink and put Clorox down, all the things that you can do to cover up what, babe?
Or wear gloves, maybe.
She very well could have wore gloves, or if he or done her.
Yeah.
But that's who you suspect. On a natural. You walk into a residence and one party's deceased and the other party says they off themselves.
So you suspect the spouse.
Don't you? As a police officer, that's a person of interest. It's definitely a person. Now they walk up on this scene and there lays a state trooper with his lights on, his spotlights on, his blue lights. I know we repeat this. His flashlight's out there with him. Radar's locked in on 79. We see he's 6 feet tall. He's fell completely backwards on an incline. Now he's going downhill. His head's down here in that ditch. His feet's up here toward the white line. He's fell completely backwards with the gun still in his hand.
That don't add up.
Pointing at him.
Doesn't add up.
And we're to believe that we're not even going to question and say, wonder what could have happened here, guys. Let's investigate this. Let's talk about this. But the first thing out of somebody's mouth is S side. Now, Asher says that everybody, unanimous, that means everybody, unanimous. I'm not real smart, but unanimous means everybody. He says in his book that it was unanimous. Well, he had 3 detectives, and he says it's unanimous. Along with him, S side. Why the rush? What happened? Was it a mistake? Was it rush to judgment? And it's like digging a hole or putting your foot. I'm good for that. I put my foot in my mouth if it wasn't for getting a knee every now and then or a slap.
Good. Everybody does that.
But
from some time or another.
Was it a rush to judgment? Made a mistake, and then after they made the mistake, they They just could not turn them away.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't correct themselves and say, well, maybe he didn't do this. Or maybe they didn't like them. Maybe they didn't like them. Nothing to do with anything that happened to them. Maybe they didn't like this fella. Military, I don't know if the other detectives are military or not. Some people, military doesn't suit everybody. Military people are a different breed. We look at things differently. We look at people differently. It just happens. Cops look at people differently than civilians look at cops, and vice versa. Could they have a change of mind today? Could this be a turning point? The doctor even said himself, it could have been a homicide.
Yeah.
There's the man that done the examination. Yeah, it could have been a homicide, but yet he goes on and says, if you want to know who killed him, dig them up. That's a
confusing.
Yeah, it's confusing. Guys, we need your help. And we need the help.
We do.
We need the help of those detectives. There was 3 of you. If you're 3 still alive, we need your help. We'll even take Captain Asher's help, Lieutenant Colonel Asher. And we'll listen.
Sure.
And we'll come back and tell if you, just like the gentleman that texted a while ago and people that gives us information. We love hearing from you. We love hearing, and let's figure this out.
We all can do it if we.
Some of these detectives have gone through a lot of stuff throughout the years, rumors. We know them. All you got to do is read the newspaper from back then at 36 years ago. Now it's not even just 36 years ago. You can read them now. Let's clear this up. Let's clear it up. Help us clear it up. Let's figure out what happened to Trooper Edrington.
Yeah.
Because if we don't figure it out, it's always going to be the same.
It'll be
just like his family has to live with S side. These people that's had rumors about them for all these years, and whether they're in prison, in Kentucky State Prison, federal prison, or somewhere else, just like their families have to live with their rumors, you have to live with yours. We can fix that. We can stop the rumors. We just got to find the killer or killers.
Right.
I'm done, baby.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We hope you're having a great night. Please like, subscribe, and share. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, and God bless.